All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Amy. My name is Amy Freidig. I'm one of the. I'm a little under the weather. I need to lean on the podium to get through these 20 minutes. Is it better audio-wise now in the back? All right, great. Thumbs up. So my name is Amy Freidig. Again, I'm one of the program coordinators here in Wisconsin, and I work with Mike and Susan at the state program office. And my presentation has been somewhat shrouded in mystery. If you looked on the conference website, it just had a title, Inclusive Ideas. So I'm going to reveal to you now what I'm going to be talking about. So I'm going to give what I consider kind of a frank talk about the journey that the Wisconsin program is going through to make it more visually diverse in terms of our state offered materials and promotional content. And what I'm going to share with you is I'm going to use to illustrate this the story of the creation of our short promotional video. And I'm going to tell you about it in a little bit of detail, and then I will share the lessons that we have learned and where we hope to go from here. So my story starts out about last spring. I wanted to become involved in expanding access and diversity efforts with our program. So I went and had a meeting with Dominic Ledesma, who we were all lucky enough. He was in the room this morning. I don't know if a few of you were able to connect with him. But Dominic is, he's got a long title. He is our Language Access Coordinator and Bilingual Editor for UW Extension. And he has worked with our program in the past and had a lot of conversations with in terms of inclusivity and expanding access. So this is where I started. And we had a conversation about this topic. And by conversation, I mean Dominic spoke and I furiously scribbled notes because I clearly had a lot to learn, and I still do. And I'm going to share with you the big takeaways that I took from this meeting with Dominic that he taught me. And first and foremost, thinking about this program outside the box. I know what this program has historically been. I know there are numerous barriers to participation for people, which I'm not going to discuss in detail right now. I also know and have read about how we need to change in numerous ways as a program as we move forward into the future. And so Dominic started putting ideas into my head that have not left yet. Ideas that are perhaps a little more radical, but are maybe things that you've secretly thought about or discussed with your colleagues, or maybe even dismissed as, nah, this is impossible. We can't do that. Things like, is the Master Gardener program able to embrace families? This is a somewhat different idea and also a difficult one to pitch, say, to very busy families about volunteering as a family. But could we offer policy and guidance in terms of having an adult volunteer with a child in tow? Or can we do things that aren't so obvious? Can we provide family-based education? These are just some examples, and they're brainstorms, but I think it's important to allow ourselves the mental latitude to have these thoughts and these discussions and not immediately say, no, we can't do that. Because we need to be creative in order to serve all the different people throughout our states. Next up, we need to make sure the educational content and the images that we're using in our communications are inclusive and thoughtful. This one was kind of honestly a revelation to me last spring. I know it may seem obvious to a lot of you, but this was the one I felt I could have the most direct effect or direct connection with given my job. So, what does this mean? This means showing people of all different types of people in our images and our content on our websites. This means producing educational content that is designed for people of various different cultural and food traditions, people that don't live in $500,000 homes, people that are just starting out their gardening journey. If you don't see yourself represented in the materials that an organization is producing, it's not going to feel like a place for you. And you know, I'm not just referring to say the language that materials are produced in. I mean, I really mean that this question, you should be, in my opinion, questioning the points of view and the lens through which your content is created. I mean, sure, tomatoes can be grown by everyone in theory, but are we potentially only emphasizing or educating on certain types of crops that are predominant in a certain type of culture? I think it's a good thought experiment to think this way and question ourselves. And finally, the last takeaway that Dominic's left me with was accessibility. And that's been mentioned throughout our couple of days here together. How can we make our program accessible for people with time, money, and flexibility constraints? Oftentimes we talk about putting things online so that people can access them when they have time. You know, also potentially eliminating some travel and childcare expenses. So those were the three main takeaways that I learned about from this conversation with Dominic. And to just real quick throw them out there, of some things that we're doing here in Wisconsin to address the first point there, thinking outside the box. I know I mentioned exploring how we can involve the family unit more. We are, as some of you are probably aware, we are currently in the process of a reorganization within Extension, and we just rejoined UW-Madison. So we are awaiting a lot of volunteer policy, et cetera. So we're kind of holding the brakes on anything more extensive or thinking in these very different directions. But in the meantime, we're trying to produce a little bit of content. For example, producing a talk that we can deliver live and put online as well for continuing ed on gardening with young children. And then another point to make about the third bullet point up there in terms of accessibility, a lot of our offerings are online, and we're continuing to increase that. And we had a little interesting blip, I shouldn't use the word blip, hopefully it's a trend, on our woody ornamental YouTube videos. And I don't have the exact numbers to give to you because YouTube is now withholding them, right? Yep. Seeing an increase in the number of young males who are watching our woody ornamental videos, which is not an audience we have typically served. And presumably they're arborists, but this was a real piece of evidence for us that this is something that here we are. This is real. We are addressing an audience that we hope to reach. So I want to talk to you more in depth, and I'm going to illustrate using my short promotional video journey about that middle bullet point about inclusive imagery. So last summer, my colleague Mike tells me, Amy, why don't you make a video promoting the program? And a lot of you probably don't know this about me, but I did my graduate research in table beats, and they don't really include a lot of, you know, storyboarding, filming, editing, video production in the curriculum. But I'm rolling with it. So I set about making this video with diversity in mind, with the lessons that Dominic had been teaching me about. And if this was the first piece of marketing that someone from the public was going to come into contact with, I wanted there to be different types of people represented in it so that hopefully that viewer would be able to see a part of themselves in it and feel welcome to become a volunteer here in Wisconsin. So in my grand plan to make this video more inclusive, I had to make this visually diverse. because this commercial was something you're going to watch. You need to be able to see differences in people. And you may have been wondering before I refer to this term as visual diversity. That's just something I coined, that how I refer to it. And of course, this is may sound a bit assumptive already. And it put me in an uncomfortable position. I had to sit down and think about what types of diversity I was going to show. And I came up with some obvious categories: race, age, and gender. These were things that people could see. And then my thought process was, how am I going to get the footage I need? How many of you have operated a video camera before for in your job? Yeah, okay, you know how much fun filming can be then. Because you see, I wanted to film and I wanted to show real Master Gardener volunteers. They were going to be my stars. But here's what reality was like. I had to be able to ask people to be in this while feeling like I was exploiting their particular attribute. And an attribute, I might add, that I was assuming. Because just because you appear a certain way doesn't mean you identify with that particular label. So I sent out feelers to a couple of county educators asking for them to round up some Master Gardener volunteers on my behalf. And I tried to use correct yet very general language, saying that I'm hoping to make this video with diversity in mind. But I didn't feel like I could come out and ask, I need people of color. I need young people. I need men, for important reasons related to our journey towards creating an inclusive program. So again, this was uncomfortable for me. And it was really hard to get people, because it's hard to directly ask. I was able to find volunteers, Master Gardener volunteers in our predominant demographics pretty easily, white women over 45. And that's not to say that we don't have Master Gardener volunteers who could have been featured, but that's when logistical issues come into play. Time and space matter here. It is really hard to get people to be willing to be filmed in this way. And if you're doing it during the work week and you're hoping to get someone who is also employed and working, it's practically impossible. But I was able to get some real live Master Gardeners and film them, and there's a few of them there. I filmed way more than I could use, but they were all of one race and one general age group. And I was able to get some men, which was one of the categories I was hoping to represent. But I needed more diversity, and to that end, I feel I got kind of lucky. First, we had an educator who works in the Menominee Nation and is of the Menominee Nation and was willing to be featured in the video, as well as a Master Gardener volunteer who was willing and available to be in the video, and she was also of the Menominee Nation. And then I had a colleague in another county who was able to hook me up with a local neighborhood garden night where he had a presence. That's Steve C. right there. It's pretty great. And he told me I'd had a good chance to come across folks with some of the visual attributes that I was hoping to include in this video. So here I was going to be getting adults not affiliated with the program to be my actors in my video promoting the Master Gardener program. I was just using them in my video for their visual attributes so that this commercial or this short video could represent different types of people. I was just dropping in. I had no time to develop a rapport or a relationship. I was just in there and getting footage. Important, yes, but uncomfortable again. My colleague, Steve, helped explain to people in general terms what I was there for, and there I was able to get some people of color and people with accents different than my own. Which brings me up to another uncomfortable reality of this process, and being frank with you, I was essentially keeping a tally sheet of the visual diversity that I was including in this. Did I have enough different skin colors? Did I have enough young people? Did I forget to include Gen Xers? Yeah. Ha ha ha, that's a Gen X joke. Did anyone get it besides him? No? Okay. And my answer to one of those was, no, I don't have enough young people. So I was able to utilize my connections with the people, with Elin and Ben, with the good people at Ellen Centennial Garden, and they let me work with their interns there, who were of course younger and had a lot of these visually diverse attributes that I was hoping to include in my video. And now I'm going to show it to you so you can see what I've been talking about.
I want to invite.
You're clapping because it worked finally. All right. All right, so now that you've seen it, I want to share some of the lessons that I learned, and I've been saying this throughout, and I think it should be emphasized that sometimes this work can put us in uncomfortable positions, and this is not meant as a judgment, just an acknowledgement, and especially depending on the relationship you have with your colleagues, and you may or may not be able to have frank discussions about the specific needs you have for a project like this relating to, you know, visual diversity in your materials. But utilizing those relationships, as you all know, and those connections can be very vital to proceeding forward with whatever project you're working on. And I'm not taking the seal down. I like that picture. Secondly, the other lesson I learned is these inclusive images should be throughout the program, not just in your promotional materials. I've started to be more critical, and I know critical can have a negative connotation, and I don't mean it in that way, but a more critical eye towards the things that I am producing to make sure that they're more visually diverse in an inclusive way. And this can be difficult, especially if you're going through images and including images at a high volume. Where do you get them? It can, as I've shared, it was difficult to get images for that minute 30 video. It can be difficult to get images at a high volume that you need. So where are we going in the future? Zoom. I'm going to mention a few main categories that are on my mind in particular in our program here in Wisconsin. First of all, images, and this is obvious. We're going to continue to up our game, continue to pay attention to this in our statewide, in our state-produced content and materials. We need to make sure that we're featuring human visual diversity, make sure that we're showing the folks that we hope to attract and make feel welcome. Because again, if you don't see yourself represented, it's not going to feel like a place for you, and we want it to. And of course, this means finding ways to gather appropriate images as we go along. And this, there's a little example here. This is a screenshot from our website, and these images were not taken by us, they were purchased. Correct?
Correct.
They were purchased.
We call it BritishGardeners.com.
Next up, and this is the one that I'm starting to become more and more passionate about, and I think, I don't know, I'll go out on a limb and say we all need to think about this more. Are we featuring content that is inclusive and represents the interests and needs of many different types of people? One example that's been coming up and that I included in this that I wanted to talk to you about is our content really coming from the default point of view of that of a homeowner? What about those folks in the apartments and condos gardening on balconies or porches? To that end, we've started working on creating an online advanced training or continuing education opportunity on apartment gardening, which is kind of like souped up container gardening with that type of content, but with some practical information about or thoughts to consider about what it's like actually doing this in an apartment, i.e. maybe you don't want to water when your neighbors are below you enjoying the night. Yep. So, but yeah, oops. In general, I think this content though has been kind of viewed as above reproach, and that we maybe haven't really thought critically in terms of diversity and inclusion with our content. Because, you know, you think gardening is gardening, plant science is plant science, but we are putting this human lens over everything. It's something that I'm going to continue to think deeply about here in Wisconsin. Another area, language. this is not directly referring to the language in which materials are produced, but rather at what level are we discussing concepts. So Mike and I just taught our foundational training here to kind of vet our activities and whatnot. And as we were going through, we were discussing this. Is the language that we are using to communicate these scientific concepts potentially alienating or discouraging folks who are coming into this, who are enthusiastic, but don't have a science background, for example, don't have a gardening background and are completely fresh? Are we using language intentionally that's inclusive and empowering, or are we being exclusive with our knowledge here? And it's not to say that we want to, I'll use the phrase, dumb down any of the content, because that is far from the truth. But how are we communicating about it? Being intentional about that. And finally, of course, in marketing, in our marketing materials that we produce, and especially with things like social media. I am a millennial. I detest this stuff, but we're doing it, and because this is a visual statement about our program, so we really need to be paying attention to what we're doing. But again, the challenge is, how can I get authentic images in an appropriate way to feature on this? So I want to thank you for my 20 minutes up here. I'm still standing. I am leaning, but I'm still standing. So I got through it despite whatever is plaguing me. And I'm passionate about this, and we got another day tomorrow. So I would, if you come up to me and have an idea, a secret little thing that you've been thinking about that's kind of crazy, I'd really like to hear it. Because this is a topic in an area I'm looking forward to working on more, and it is new to me, so I'm looking forward to learning from all of you about it. So thanks, guys.